back to the One-on-One podcast brought to you by the High Tops Media Network. Noah Schwartz alongside my partner, Jack Acello, here for the show today. And a different type of show, and one that we are very excited about. Normally, the two of us, we do the show at our houses. We do it over Skype, over Zoom. And this time we're doing it a little bit differently. This time we're in an actual studio here at 44 Media in Hillsdale, New Jersey. Thanks to Gregory and the team here for helping us put this together for today's podcast. We are so excited, thrilled to be here in 44 Media today for a great show. Come check them out for any of your media needs, whether it's podcasts, video shoots, whatever it may be. They've got it all. So thanks to them again, and we are so thrilled to be here for today's show. Jack, how does it feel to be back in a studio for the first time for us in a while? Because normally we're just doing this from our house.
Feels like home, I gotta say. A lot of the time at Ithaca College, we would do the show at different places, apartments, or a dorm room. We'd always work in studios, and it's been a while since we've been in one, so it certainly feels good to be back.
So we've got a busy agenda here on the show today, a really loaded episode. First, we're going to do another NBA standings update, talk a little bit about that, and that's something we'll probably be doing as the season winds down for the next month or so on each and every episode, just going over what the standings kind of look like. Then we're going to talk about some of the teams that have had injuries pile up. I mean, there's a lot of them over these last few weeks here. You got Minnesota, they're dealing with a Karl Anthony Towns injury. You've got the Warriors, a lot of these teams dealing with significant injuries as we come down the stretch, and then a few also with some guys returning in the next few days probably, including our beloved New York Knicks. OG Anunoby set to return hopefully tonight against the 76ers. Then we're going to talk a little bit. Yeah, we hope so. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the Boston Celtics. A high-profile week for them last week with two big-time losses against top competition. So we're going to talk about that. And then do a little bit of a debate at the end of the show like we always do, just talking about who the biggest threats are in these conferences outside of Boston and Denver. We saw those two teams play a week ago. That game was awesome. The Nuggets pulled it out at the very end. But who might be the biggest competitors for them in each of their conferences? So we're going to jump into all of that. And let's start with our standings update, Jack. If you look at things right now, the East, we kind of know who the 10 teams are going to be. We'll start there. Boston at the top of things, up 8.5 games now over the Milwaukee Bucks and Cleveland Cavaliers. Then we've got kind of a logjam after that from around 4 to 8. And then we've got our teams at the bottom. We don't really have to talk much about those. They're all pretty awful. But let's start kind of towards the top with that 2-3 spot. Cleveland and the Bucks just a game away from each other right now. Bucks just slightly ahead. Who do you think's getting the 2 seed? Who do you think's going to end up with that spot, and maybe why do you think so?
I'm going to go with the Milwaukee Bucks at the 2 seed. At the end of the day, they have Giannis, and simply the Cavaliers don't. Giannis is arguably the second best player in the world right now besides Nikola Jokic, and they've started to find their stride a little bit. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games, and they've had a couple scares. Obviously, the Clippers without Kawhi Leonard and Paul George nearly defeated them. I believe that was on Sunday, and they're just playing really well. They're starting to sort of mesh under Doc Rivers. My only concern with them is the fact that Chris Middleton remains out with that injury, and we already know that these injuries for him have lingered over the past couple of seasons, and I really do wonder if when he comes back, if the chemistry is going to be good enough, but at least for the regular season, I like the Bucks in that 2 spot, especially now with Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley both out with injury for Cleveland.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Cleveland later. They've got some really bad injuries piling up. Max Strus also out for them, so not good there. But with the Bucks, you look at what they've done over the last 10 or so games. You go back to the All-Star break. They're a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. And I know we made fun of Doc Rivers and that whole hire and the whole saga that played out there. They've actually played a lot better as of late under him. He seems to have really instilled something different with them that they didn't have under Adrian Griffin. So I also think they're going to get the 2 seed. Moving on down a little bit. So we've got, like I said, a logjam between 4 and 8. The Knicks right now are at 4. They're 13 games out of first. Orlando just a half game behind. Then the Sixers a half game behind that. And then in that 7-8 spot, we've got Indiana and Miami, and those teams are going to be battling. But all 5 of those teams, we don't know who's going to avoid the play-in, who's not going to avoid the play-in. But one thing I've been thinking about, Jack, is the 6th spot actually the best place for those teams to be? Because then you get the winner of a potential 2-3 matchup in the second round between the Bucks and Cavs, and you get to avoid the Celtics until the conference finals. And that's a big thing. I mean, Boston looks like far and away the favorite in this conference. We're going to talk about that later. But I want to know, do you think the 6th spot is the best place to be? And maybe who winds up there, who actually avoids the play-in tournament? Because that's going to be a huge race down the stretch with 5 teams, all of them pretty good.
Yeah, it's a tough question to ask because you don't want to say to try not to win games because then obviously because
The basketball gods might get you.
The basketball god, yeah, that's very true. The basketball gods certainly might get you, and you don't want to risk falling into the play-in. So I would say you have to compete and you have to try to win because besides risk losing in the play-in and avoiding a best-of-7 series, but more than anything, if you avoid the play-in, you get that 1 week off, and for teams that are lingering with injuries, that 1 week could be crucial in how far you can go in the playoffs or not, especially with all that time off. So that's a big deal, and it is a very tight-knit race, and when you look at the race, tonight could actually play a big factor when you look at some of the tiebreakers. I believe as of right now, between the Knicks and the Cavs, the Knicks have the tiebreaker. They're a little bit games behind, but with about 20 or so games left, who's to say they can't make a run at the 3 seed? Then
if they get healthy, it's possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then the Knicks and Magic. The Magic have the tiebreaker over the Knicks, I believe, with a 3-1 record this season over the Knicks. And I believe the Knicks at this moment have the tiebreaker over Miami, while Indiana has the tiebreaker over the Knicks. And then tonight, if the Sixers beat the Knicks, I believe they finish their season series tied at 2-2. So
you just memorized all that. Nice.
Yeah, I know. That was pretty good. That was a pretty good run. So all the standings and every possibility is certainly at play. No spot is safe. No spot is safe from 4 to 8, and obviously the Knicks and Magic I think have a decent shot to move up to 4. Not 4, to move up to 3 with Cleveland's injury problems. And like we said, the Knicks are getting healthy. Possibly OG Anunoby returning tonight as we record this Tuesday, March 12th. He is listed as questionable for the first time since shaking hands with Frank the Tank. So certainly exciting stuff for the New York Knicks. But I would have to say, my opinion, I think the East standings will be for the 4-5 matchup. I believe it will be the Knicks and the Magic.
Okay. The Magic are playing pretty well. They've lost a few games recently. Miami, by the way, lost 3 straight.
Yeah, right when they were starting to find their groove.
Yeah, you really thought that team was coming together. Jimmy Butler's been playing really well, so they've been losing somewhat surprisingly because this is Miami's time of year.
Yeah. Also,
so we'll see what happens with that.
Interesting with Indiana, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, a little bit later. But Ben Mathurin was ruled out for the season.
Yes, another big injury. Yeah.
So that's a big loss, especially.
And I don't think Halliburton has been the same since coming back.
He looks a little off, and not to mention now when you look at it, trading Buddy Hield could have been costly, especially with Mathurin out for the year. A lot of 3-point shooting left to be desired.
Yep, definitely. And then let's talk about Boston quickly. They're going to be the 1 seed. They've already clinched a playoff spot. They're going to clinch the 1 seed in like a couple of weeks here. It's just incredible what they've done.
60 wins.
Yeah, 50-14 this year so far, so it's incredible. If there's one team that you don't want to see in the first 2 rounds, who is it?
In the first 2 rounds, I would say Milwaukee. They scare me a little bit. Obviously, we know about Boston. I'm saying somebody else. Milwaukee, I'm a little up and down with them. At one point, I could totally see them losing in the first round, and I could still possibly see that if they end up in a matchup with the Philadelphia 76ers and Joel Embiid is healthy and able to come back. That series will be a dogfight. I truly believe that. And the Bucks still scare me a little bit. Obviously, they have, you could argue, the greatest scoring combination with big man and guard since Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Dame Lillard. Obviously, we know what Dame Lillard is capable of, one of the most clutch shooters of all time. Giannis, a beast on the block, and they got some other championship veterans. But they do scare me a little bit for the fact that their defense at times could be questionable this year. Obviously,
getting better, though.
Getting better, certainly. Pat Bev has actually been a bigger boost than I thought. But obviously, Chris Middleton's lingering health. Brook Lopez, obviously, still dominant, but when the playoffs get a lot more physical, nitty-gritty, you don't know how the 36-year-old is going to hold up as more time goes on, and the body can only take so much. And then Bobby Portis, not known for his defense, and especially the thing that scares me the most from Milwaukee, though, at times, is that how is their defense going to be against guards? I always say the West is about big men, the East is about guards. When you have players like Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Halliburton. So certainly a lot of guys that you need to have top-tier defense. Tyrese Maxey is another top-tier defense on the ball handler, and I don't necessarily know if Milwaukee has that because how many minutes could you possibly play Pat Beverly?
Yeah, that's true. That would probably be a conference final, just assuming the Milwaukee Bucks hold on to a 2 or 3 seed. For me, it's Miami.
That's fair.
And they're sitting pretty at 8th right now. Like, it's not been going great. They've lost 3 in a row, like we said. But for them, it doesn't really matter how you play in March, even though typically they play pretty well this time of year. It's about once you get to the playoffs. And we have seen it. They've been down in playoff series before, but it doesn't matter. You've got to put them away for them to be fully out of a series. Yes, they have to be fully done for you to stop fearing them because they always just come back and they just continue to play hard. And
I hope they end up against Boston. That'll be a fun first round
it would be
series.
a really
They
fun
always go 7.
first round. Normally we have this as the conference finals. We've had it multiple times in the last
3 of the last 4 years, right?
Yeah, 3 of the last 4 years we've had it. And man, Miami would just give them a dogfight in the first round. And that's not what Boston wants. They got to put these series away quickly. And I think they could do that against a few of these other potential matchups. But if it ends up being 1-8 with Celtics Heat, that could be easily a 6 or 7 game series. And I could see Miami potentially winning it again.
Yeah, and it's strange. And it's strange with Miami because obviously it's so weird because you think a lot of the time for basketball, obviously the playoffs are a different animal, but the regular season tells you a lot about a team. And it's so weird for Miami because they were like this last year. They were 2 minutes and 45 seconds away from going home in the play-in, but they somehow survived, and they went all the way to the NBA Finals. I think they're a better team on paper this year, especially since the Terry Rozier trade. Yep. They scare me much.
Right too.
Yeah, they scare me much more. So it'll be interesting to see how much they can give Boston a fight. I really hope that ends up being the 1-8 matchup.
If they're in the play-in tournament, all they have to do is just get out, and everybody's going to be terrified of them.
Yeah,
you're terrified of Jimmy. You're terrified of Spo. Terrified of Bam, Pat Riley, the whole gang over there.
Last year's the 8th seed. I mean, they beat the Bucks. The Bucks, they had 60+ wins last year. I'm not sure. If I remember.
Close, yeah.
Yeah, they were close to it. Giannis obviously he missed a couple games, but even so, Jimmy Butler, one of the scariest playoff performers, and you can never count him out in any series.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the West a little bit. We've got a dogfight at the top. 4 teams really in the race for that. Right now, it's the Thunder. They've taken back control by a half game over Denver. And then Minnesota, a game and a half out of first. And the Clippers, 3.5 games out of first. So all 4 of those teams have a legit shot to potentially have home court through the Western Conference. Your pick for that spot right now is who?
For the 1 seed?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the Oklahoma City Thunder just because I see them as a team that, as a young team, you want to win as many games as you can, and you want to get that thing. You know, when you're young, you don't really know any better, and you go all out. So I can see them certainly doing that.
They bring it every night.
Not to mention they have one of the top 2 players in the Western Conference in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's in most people is either the MVP or runner-up for MVP right now. He's playing exceptional, and then other guys, Holmgren, Jalen Williams, Josh Giddey, they're all stepping up and playing well. So I like them because they got the fresh legs. They really haven't dealt with a ton of injury problems this year. So
no, I actually saw a stat the other day. I was going to mention this. They played now 64 games, and they've had the same starting lineup in over 50 of them.
Yeah,
so they have just had the same guys. Chet has not missed a game yet this year.
Yeah,
as a rookie, that's very surprising.
Yeah, totally. And they've been impressive, and I think they do have a great chemistry. So I think they have a strong chance to finish as the 1 seed. I could see Denver getting it, but at the same time, I think when you look at Denver, I wonder how much they think do they need it.
Well, they're pushing for it. I was going to mention that.
Yeah.
So they were supposed to go to the White House at some point coming up.
They said
There's
no.
reports that they're not going to actually go, and they're just locking in on the 1 seed. Apparently, they really want it. I think it's probably because they have so many young players coming off their bench that they think might need to be home, right? It's probably better for them to be in a place where they're more comfortable. And apparently Nikola Jokic, around the All-Star break, sent out a text. I read this somewhere, that he sent out a text to everybody and said, we want this spot. We want the 1 seed. We're going for it again. So I actually think they're going to get it. I think they're going to push for it, and they're not going to rest guys in March like they typically have been in past years. I think this year they're really going to push for it, and I think they're going to get it.
Yeah, certainly possible. And it is interesting to me. I was just thinking about this, that also, for Denver to get the 1 seed, it also is a huge advantage because more than anything, Denver is a huge home court advantage, not just because of the crowd, but because of the altitude.
Yeah.
That always plays a factor.
27-6 at home this year.
Yeah, and the more games you can get with that extra weapon with the altitude, the better for your chances. So I'm sure they would like that. I don't see the Clippers really having a chance. Not that they don't have the talent to do so, but we always know with the Clippers, the biggest thing is they got to be healthy.
And right now,
Paul George,
it's been the biggest challenge for them that they've had all year in terms of their health, right, at these last couple weeks.
And I really like this Clippers team. If they can get to the playoffs with the 8 to 9 guys they want in their regular playoff rotation, I think they have a great shot to do something. And we've seen the Clippers, they've just had such unfortunate luck over the past 2 seasons. 2 years ago, Kawhi missed the entire season. PG missed a lot of time, but they fought their way into the play-in, and unfortunately, Paul George got COVID in that game, so he wasn't allowed to play. They lost, and then last year they had a tough first-round matchup against the Phoenix Suns. Kawhi Leonard tore his meniscus. I believe it was after Game 1. And
Yeah, they were done after that.
And many people thought, though, if he was healthy, they could have won that series even without Paul George. So the Clippers, it's always been about health. So I don't think they're going to push for the 1 seed. And for the Timberwolves, now with Karl Anthony Towns out, I just can't see them competing.
Yeah,
for it.
I don't think so either. Let's talk about New Orleans because they have been under the radar really good.
Oh, God.
They're a team that we've kind of clowned a lot on the show.
A
39 and 25 is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
As the 5 seed right now, 6 games out of first, 2.5 games out of fourth. They have the NBA's longest current winning streak of 4 straight, which I know is not that impressive, but it's the longest anybody else has right now. Do you think they could win enough to even push into the top 4 and have home court in the first round? Because I don't think they're a title team. I don't think they're even going to win a series. We've said that many times on the show before. But they've won enough games in the regular season, and they seem to be healthy enough and deep enough where maybe they could actually push the Clippers or the Timberwolves and actually get into the top 4. I think that could happen.
I think they can push the Timberwolves. I don't know if they can push the Clippers.
They're 4.5 behind the Timberwolves right now.
Yeah, the reason I say they can maybe push the Timberwolves is because they're also a team that, just like them, lacks that playoff experience. I can't see them doing that against the Clipper team with a healthy Kawhi Leonard, who's one of the most impressive postseason performers of the modern era. So I can't see that. And like I said about the Timberwolves, this bodes more so for the Pelicans. They have almost very little to almost no championship experience when it comes to their key players. McCollum has a little, but outside of one run, though, they really never went anywhere. And then Jonas Valanciunas, he had a couple of years with the Grizzlies, but also they never went anywhere with it. So,
and by the way, I mentioned we did see the Pelicans play one massive game earlier in the season in the in-season tournament and got blasted by 40 against the Lakers. So we know what happens when they play in a big spot.
Yeah, we've seen it in a big spot. I don't trust their defense, especially down low. And like we said, it's about, for me, the Western Conference is about how you defend big men. When you look at the Thunder, Chet Holmgren, Nuggets, Jokic, Timberwolves, Cat, Rudy Gobert, the Lakers, Anthony Davis, the Kings, Sabonis. So it's a lot about the big men, and I just don't trust Valanciunas to be able to handle those type of guys. Zion is not really a threat for defense besides running in and getting an impressive block every now and then, but I don't trust him to stop a matchup one-on-one consistently. So I don't like the Pelicans. Like we've said, we've clowned them. I don't see them as a big threat.
Yeah, I don't either. They are a top 10 defense, by the way, overall, but I don't necessarily know if that's going to translate into the playoffs.
Especially in crunch time.
Yeah, and then let's look down into the play-in tournament. We've got Phoenix at 6. They're holding on a spot by a game. And then after that, it's Kings, Mavs, Lakers, Warriors, and they're all pretty jammed up. The Lakers only a game and a half behind the Kings and Mavs. Warriors only 2.5 games out. So theoretically, either of those teams could get out of the 9-10 spot. Do you think it happens? And if it does, which team? We know Steph's out right now, so that's going to present more of a challenge, and we'll see what happens with his ankle as we move forward here. He's not going to play tomorrow against the Mavericks, but you think either of these teams have a chance? Lakers have a tougher schedule.
I think the Lakers do, just because obviously I'm never going to count a team out that has LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And also, if D'Lo can play the way he's played in some of these games, that game against Milwaukee,
that was
44,
magical.
He's finding his stride right now. So they could be very dangerous if he can play like that. And obviously, we saw the Lakers last year in the play-in. They won, they got in, and they made a run. But I think the West is just better this year. I don't think they're necessarily going to jump. I look at who's ahead of them. The Mavericks, I think, have been playing very well as of late. And they won 3 straight, and they have a game and a half lead as of now.
Yeah. I will say it's a huge couple of days here for the Kings. On Tuesday when we're recording this, they have Milwaukee at home in a back-to-back tomorrow. They have to win that, and then tomorrow they have the Lakers at home. So back-to-back. If the Lakers were to win that game tomorrow and the Kings were to also lose tonight, they'd be tied.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It could very easily flip itself, but at the same time, the Kings have owned the Lakers for years now. So we'll see.
The Kings have to split, and they're a team that has disappointed me a little bit this year. The Kings, I was very high on them coming into the year. I thought they were a team that was young. They were fast. They scored a lot. I thought they had a chance to possibly be the 1 seed this year coming into the season.
I think we both had them as like the 2 or 3.
I had them as my 1.
Yeah,
I had them as my 1. So they've hit a hiccup a little bit. They gotta find the next piece. Like, that's a big piece, I think. I think that's what they're lacking. But they're a team that took the Warriors to 7 last year. They have experience. I'm never going to count out De'Aaron Fox. He is one of the most dangerous players in clutch time.
Had 40-plus last week in L.A., so
yeah,
we've seen him do it.
He put on a show.
Yeah.
But I do think it is possible. The Suns are they're only a game behind the Suns. So this is a big week. They can either fall into the 9-10 or they can possibly move up to 5 or 6.
Yeah, and Phoenix got to be careful too because they've got a tough schedule. Booker finally now back, but we've seen it's just been a turnstile of who's playing for them when it matters. So throughout the season they've just had so many injuries. So we'll see. But the West pretty compact after the top 4 with those teams, and we got the top 4. We'll see who ends up getting the 1, and then the East, a lot of jammed up teams as well. So that's what the standings look like as of now. And we'll see how it breaks out and shakes out for the next month or so. Let's move on to some of the teams with a lot of injuries. We mentioned the Timberwolves, Jack. Karl-Anthony Towns out at least a month. He's going to be reevaluated in 4 weeks. He had left meniscus surgery. It just sucks. I mean, the Timberwolves, a franchise that is as cursed as any, seems like. Finally, this is the best team they've had in, 20 years since Kevin Garnett was there?
Probably,
yeah.
You could argue the Butler year before Butler got hurt.
Yeah, and this team has won more games than that. And now he's probably going to not be back until early in the playoffs, if at that point. So the question then begs itself, can they hold on from now until the end of the regular season? And I think they'll do okay. We've seen them win some games without him before, and I think they'll be all right. Anthony Edwards, by the way, put on a show in Indiana the other day with that game-winning block, a game they did win. Then they lost to the Lakers. But if they get to the playoffs and he's not healthy 100% or even playing at all, it really does beg the question of, can they win a round without him? Because they're going to be favored. They're going to have home court, right? Like, they're going to be in that position almost certainly where they should be able to win a series. But they're a team that we've had trouble trusting over the last few years with the way they play offense at the end of games, and we don't know how it really works with the 2 bigs, if that actually can win multiple playoff rounds. But to get into a playoff series without Cat, it's just going to be tough. I don't know if they can score enough. They're 18th in offense now, and that's with Towns. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to hang on and win a playoff series without him, but that's just me.
Yeah, and to me it's interesting. I don't necessarily know what their plan is, because if I were them, I would try to get into that. Maybe I think you want to play the 1 seed in the first round, especially if that could be the Thunder. If they can get a 4-5
second round.
Yeah, second round. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry. Second round. If you can get to that 4-5 matchup, if they can play the Pelicans, and they can, because I think that's a team they can beat probably without Cat. I think Ant's the best player in that series, so I like that matchup for them. And if they say the Thunder gets it against another young team, that's a chance for them to go on a run. So if they can have that matchup, I don't know how they want to play it necessarily. I think going for the 4. I mean, they have a 2-game lead on the. They have a 2-game lead on the Timberwolves. Not the Timberwolves. They have a 2-game lead on the Clippers. Excuse me. They have a 2-game lead on the Clippers, and I don't necessarily know if they can hold that. So it's going to be tough. And more than anything, at least as the standings are right now, you avoid Denver in the second round if the season ended today.
Right.
So a lot of benefits to that.
How would you, if you're Chris Finch, want to generally play your rotation as we move forward here? Because we saw them against the Lakers the other day, and half their team was out. Gobert didn't play. Kyle Anderson didn't play. So that really proved nothing. But when they're all healthy outside of Cat, and they have Naz Reid, and they have Anderson back in there, and Jaden McDaniels, are you trying to play with 2 bigs still and let Reid and Gobert play alongside each other in a starting lineup? Or are you going to bring him still off the bench and let McDaniels move to the 4 spot where maybe he's a little more of a natural fit? What are you looking to do here? Because I think with Cat, you can really space the floor so well that it makes it at least viable offensively with the 2 bigs, but I'm not sure if they can necessarily do that without him.
I like the 2 bigs for them, and more than anything, like you said, Cat can stretch the floor, but I think especially in the playoffs, you want to make other teams play your game,
right,
more than anything else. And with the Timberwolves being able to do that, they can make teams maybe go double bigs, or they have to put a better defender rather than a shooter out there. You want to control the type of game that's played, and with 2 bigs, it allows you to do that. And I will say, for the Timberwolves, obviously losing Cat is a big deal, but I mean, Naz Reid is the perfect plug-in player.
He's the best backup center in the NBA.
Oh,
like,
easily,
hands down.
totally,
yeah.
Without question. Probably him or Hartenstein when the Knicks are fully healthy.
Right.
So, yeah, I had to throw that in there. The Timberwolves. Naz Reid, great shooter. You could argue he's a better defender, especially he's a small ball 5. I think he defends 4s pretty well. So I think they're in a perfect position as long as they don't stay healthy. I mean, as long as they do stay healthy. What is wrong with me? They do stay healthy, and I like this Timberwolves team a lot more than I have in recent years, especially because they're not going to be so reliant as much, I think, on Mike Conley as now. They got that other backup point guard spot. So
Morris, yeah.
They really are in good shape. If Anthony Edwards can be the player he's been all year.
Right, yeah. So we'll see what happens with the Timberwolves, but like we said, a cursed franchise. They've won, I think, 2 playoff series in their history, and they both came in the same season in 2004. They've never won another one. And it looked like they were going to, and now Cat's out. So it's going to make it a lot more difficult. Another team dealing with injuries, we mentioned the Warriors. Steph out with his, 500th different ankle problem throughout the course of his career. This is something that's just bugged him forever. And it's a right ankle sprain. Thankfully, it doesn't look like it's too serious, but he's missed the last few games. And, man, was that a bad loss against the Wembanyama-less Spurs the other day.
That was ugly.
They had no Steph, but no Victor on the other side, and they still lost at home. And then they ended up beating the Spurs last night in that home-and-home they played. Wemby did play in that game, but they were able to win on the road. So at least they came back and won that game. Tomorrow they have Dallas. Steph's not going to play. And then they have the Lakers on Saturday night, ABC primetime. We'll see about if Steph can suit up for that one. But when he's not out there, Jack, I watched a lot of that game last night. It proves to you that roster is just no good without Steph. Like, they have almost no chance to score.
Oh, yeah,
they don't have enough shot creators. It's just bad.
Well, we know that. That's without a doubt. Steph, having Steph Curry versus not having Steph Curry changes everything about how you play. And the Warriors have no chance unless he's dropping 27 a game. And they need him to do that night in and night out. And
it's not even enough. They're only 34 and 30.
Yeah,
You know? It's not
really,
even good.
And what's really hurt them, a lot of years passed, and years they've even won the title. Their last Kevin Durant, the year with Kevin Durant, they won their second title. He missed about a month and a half dealing with the ankle injury, and the year they won their fourth title, he missed the end of the regular season. Yep. He came off the bench that first round series. So he's had these problems before. This isn't uncommon. The difference is that the Warriors haven't been good to start the season, so it's really hurting them now. Yeah. And they're in no jeopardy to fall out of the play, and they got a 5-game lead on the 10th seed over Houston, and Şengün just got seriously hurt. Thank God it's not as bad as it seemed. But they should be safe there. That game against the Lakers on Saturday is going to be crucial. It's not could he play. He has to play. It's that simple, because be a huge difference in an elimination game, one game against LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Having that home court advantage could be crucial. And the Warriors, they play a lot better at home than they do on the road in recent years. So they need to win that game without question.
Yeah, I think so too. We'll see what happens with stuff.
And also, when you look at the Lakers' record, the Lakers are 24-11 at home. They're only 12-19 on the road. So that's a huge difference.
Right. I will say one thing about that I saw this stat on Twitter the other day about the Lakers, and this is just crazy, and it just proves the incompetence of the Los Angeles franchise.
Wait, Darvin Ham's incompetent?
I've said that before. They're 36 and 30, so 6 games over 500. It's the most games they've been over 500 since the end of AD's second season in LA, the year that they were the 7th seed, and then they had to play Phoenix, and they lost because AD got hurt. In all the years since then, the 2 rush years, now this year, they've never been 6 games over at any point. I mean, how insane is that to have LeBron James and Anthony Davis and you never are even 6 over 500? But finally they are.
They're like the weirdest team. Like they beat Boston without LeBron and AD on the road. They just beat Milwaukee without LeBron James.
And they're capable with one shoulder.
Yeah, they're capable of doing all that, but then at the same time, and LeBron James even admits this, we can do that, but then another night, we'll play the Brooklyn Nets or the Detroit Pistons with our full roster. We may lose that game, or it will be a dogfight till the very end.
They just played Washington to overtime a week and a half ago when they were fully healthy. They are just maddening.
I don't even understand how they're 36 and 30. And some of these games, we have a good friend, he calls it devil magic, and sometimes it almost seems like that.
They pulled them out. They're one of the better crunch time teams, but if they weren't, they'd be under 500 at this point. It's just maddening watching them each and every single night. So let's talk about the Cavs. We'll go back to the East a little bit as another team that has a lot of injuries, and we mentioned it. Evan Mobley, left ankle sprain, and the disappointment with Evan Mobley just continues. He's either hurt or not playing at the level that we expected. It's just been a 2-year stretch with him where we're just like, come on, man, like become a superstar, and it hasn't happened yet. And Donovan Mitchell, knee soreness, has missed the last, I believe, 6 games now.
And he's ineligible now for awards.
Can't get any awards. All-NBA, none of that. And that is a huge deal, Jack. And we've talked about this before. I'm not a fan of the rule, the 65-game limit that they put in this year. I know you like it more than I do. But we're getting to the point where Embiid, not up to the limit. Mitchell, not going to be at the limit. Other guys, Jalen Brunson, you said, is only a couple games.
I think he needs to play 7 of the last 19.
Right, so there's a lot of guys who haven't gotten to the 65 or won't get to the 65. And you're going to look at third-team All-NBA this year, Jack, and you're going to see guys who, frankly, don't deserve to be on that spot. They're just not at that level, and it's going to help up the roster that they need to in order to contend for championships because they're paying $40 extra million to guys, and that's why I didn't like the rule in the first place. it's just going to make it so much harder for teams to build when you have guys who aren't top 10 superstars who are getting paid like they are top 10 superstars, and that is bound to happen now.
Yeah, and again, I understand people's complaining of the rule. My whole thing is, like, I remember one year Kevin Durant played in 48 games and he was on the team. Like, you missed nearly half the season. Like, that's not fair to a player who puts up similar stuff. So what they're not as big of a name.
So Brandon Ingram, he's a good example.
Yeah.
If he makes it this year, he's Supermax eligible. Is he a Supermax player? No.
You don't know, is he a Supermax player? Is he an all-star caliber player, though? Yes, and if availability is the best ability, and we say that, and especially that bodes true in the NBA.
But it is going to make it harder if someone like that, a guy at his level makes it, and then have to pay him the extra money.
At the same time, he was gonna make a lot of money anyway.
So back to the Cavs. I said Mobley out, Mitchell out, Max Strus knee issue also concerning in a lot of different ways for that team. And they have not played particularly great in the last, let's say, month or so. And they had a stretch where, 17 out of 18 wins?
17 out of 18 without Darius Garland and without Evan Mobley.
Yeah, and they played phenomenal for a month and a half. I think they were 11-2 in January, just rolling right along. And now they're kind of struggling. Lost 2 in a row, 5-5 in their last 10. And injuries are obviously a big part of it. But I do think that, and this is something we've talked about, the team got back healthy and things kind of went down a little bit, and they've continued to over the last few weeks. And it does beg the question again of, does the top 4 on this roster, Garland, Mitchell, Allen, Mobley, does it fit perfectly right? And when those guys are hurt, you've seen they play a little bit better. Now they're playing a little bit worse because Mitchell's out, who's obviously their best player. But the question still, we have to ask it, does this team fit together and can it actually win big in the playoffs? And I think the answer to that is no.
Yeah, I would say no. We haven't seen it a ton, obviously. The Knicks, they took care of their business against them last year. Jalen Brunson also has beaten Donovan Mitchell 2 out of the last 3 years in the first round.
That win for the Knicks a couple weeks ago in Cleveland was massive.
That was massive. I'm not even going to talk about that game. That game gave me nightmares. I couldn't even when it was like almost like when Aaron Rodgers got hurt. It's like, you're happy about the win, but at what cost?
Right, exactly.
So that felt like it. Thank God Brunson was okay. And the Knicks season is still alive, and they're in that 3 seed right now. They could finish as 2. Who's to say they can't finish 6 at this point? I don't think that's going to happen, but the way they've played, like we said, they've struggled recently. We're not really sure about their scheme fits, and the chemistry this year, as good as they've been, though, they haven't had many games where their top 4 have played together.
Right. Yeah, Mobley's only played, I think it's like 32 or 33 games. He's not played very much. Yeah. And when he has, as we've said, disappointing relative to the Anthony Davis type expectations that he had coming in, where he just looked like a future super duper star.
Certainly, and the same issue for Cleveland. They fixed a lot of their shooting, but the one thing I feel like they really didn't address, and I think this is where it's going to cost them, they didn't address their 2 biggest needs necessarily, which was they need better defense on the wing and they need better defense on ball handlers. As good as Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell are, having 2 small 6'1" guards that can't stop anybody is a problem.
Yeah.
And that's going to be an issue in the playoffs. As good as they are down low, and as good as the defense is, in the playoffs last year, the Knicks still got in the paint, and they did it rather easily.
And out-rebounded them
easily. Yeah, Mitchell Robinson dominated the 2 of them. So they have issues, and more than anything, and it's not like it works to perfection. And unlike the Timberwolves, when Cat can stretch the floor, Evan Mobley can't do that at the 4 spot. He doesn't shoot threes. He doesn't really have that mid-range good jumper. It's kind of everything's on the block. And Jared Allen, he could stretch it out a little bit.
He's
but
a lob catcher.
Yeah, not too far. So it's not. It really clogs the lane as well and doesn't allow for a lot of perimeter shooting. So I don't like this fit for the Cavs. Their team, they've done well in the regular season, but I've said before, they don't really, if they played the Knicks again. If they play the Sixers in the first round, with Joel,
yeah.
I'm taking the Sixers, and if they play the Knicks, I'm taking the Knicks.
Yeah, no, I generally agree with that. We'll see if they can get healthy.
If both Knicks and Sixers are healthy, I take them.
Yeah, they're gonna need Mitchell back. We're gonna see if Mobley comes back anytime soon. And if
without
they do,
Mitchell, they're done.
maybe that helps. But like we said, we still don't necessarily agree with what the fit looks like.
Without Donovan Mitchell, they're done.
All right. A couple teams we want to get to where guys are actually coming back, because these are all new injuries that we just talked about. But a couple of teams where, they're getting healthier at the right time. And we'll start with Milwaukee. Chris Middleton seems like he's almost back from his ankle issue. Doc Rivers said he really looked good. He's getting closer. That was the other day. He said that after the Clipper game. Middleton said it was the worst ankle injury that he's ever had in his entire career. So obviously a concern with him, and he's had so many injuries over the years that it's just they're piling up at this point. But if they can get back healthy, we've talked about him, they're dangerous, right? Middleton's obviously still a very good third option. Lillard's a great second option. Giannis is one of the best in the world. So we're going to see what happens with them. But I think it's really cool that they've had this midseason transformation where they've played so much better. 7-3 in their last 10. They did get blasted by the Warriors recently, but generally they've been very, very good under Doc Rivers as of late since the All-Star break. And to get fully healthy and have their team back, I think it's going to be a real positive for them down the stretch.
Certainly is going to be a positive. Middleton, they need to build chemistry, especially him and Dame. So that's going to be a big factor. And I just wonder, though, if Middleton could hold up because, I mean, bad knees and bad ankles is a hard combination to fight with. And especially he said it's the worst injury. Who's to say it's not lingering? I don't remember. Did he get surgery for this injury?
No, he just rested for a month.
So I wonder.
I think it was on Durant's ankle.
Yeah, so I wonder also, this screams to me like off-season surgery, so it's not fully recovered. It's just playable.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are certain injuries that necessarily, so they still linger. So I wonder how much it's there, and I wonder how much he can play through the pain. So still certainly question marks, but hey, I'm not gonna say Middleton's a clutch performer. He's hit tons of big shots in the playoffs. For at one point during the Bucks championship season, you know, as good as Giannis is, Middleton was the closer.
Yeah, the ball was in his hands at the end of games.
Yeah,
always,
exactly.
Yeah.
So he's a crucial player, and if they want to win a championship, they need him this year, and they need him, and they need him to play well. So.
I mentioned it a few minutes ago. Since the All-Star break, Milwaukee 7th in offense and 7th in defense. So one of the only teams in the top 10. So things are coming along, like very rapidly at this point with the way Doc Rivers has helped. And we made fun of it. We obviously clowned the whole process, all the excuses that he made early on, and it seemed like he didn't even want to be in Milwaukee to coach the team. He just took the money. But he's certainly making a big impact.
And he wanted to coach the All-Star game.
Yeah, he did do that
after 2 games.
All right, let's talk about our beloved Knicks. They're also getting healthy. We said before, OG Anunoby on the way back. He should be hopefully back tonight against Philly in that second game that they've played against them in the last couple of days, especially after that 73-point disaster the other night. They really need him. And then Julius Randle, to I think everyone's surprise, posted videos on Instagram yesterday of him shooting. So maybe he's getting close with the shoulder injury.
It was weird because before that shooting video, it kind of seemed like, at least according from Ian Begley of SNY, that there was a little bit concerned with him that he hasn't moved to the next step. Julius Randle was like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, so he was shooting. Does that mean a lot? Not necessarily, but we're going to see.
Can he bump down low is the big question.
Yeah. This is a team that, for me, it's not necessarily about winning a lot of games down the stretch. They've won enough.
It's a matter of health.
It's a matter of getting healthy and building the chemistry because they have all these new acquisitions, right, from OG, which is obviously that trade was pre-All-Star break, but now even guys at the trade deadline with, Bogdanovich and Burks, like they've got to build up chemistry with all these different pieces. I don't know if Tibbs has any idea of who his playoff rotation is, what it's going to look like, who's going to be playing, who's not. They have about 17, 18 games here to figure a lot of stuff out, and they're going to need their best players back to do that. So can Mitchell Robinson even make it back at some point? We're going to see. But just to have Anunoby back and hopefully have Randle back soon, that is a massive positive for the Knicks because, as we've seen in the last 15 games, the lineups they're putting out there to score, they're not NBA offensive lineups. Like they can't put the ball in the basket efficiently. They can't score. They're not even getting to 100 points a lot of these games. It's just really ugly basketball to watch, and they need to get back to full health at some point.
Yeah, and we've both shared this, and for some of our other friends, like, this Knicks team before all the injuries, like, I truly believe if those injuries didn't hit, they would be sitting at the 2 seed right now. And
they're 37 and 27. They'd probably be 15 or more over if they were healthy.
They would be close to winning around 50 games if they didn't have all the injuries. And we got to remember how good the Knicks were the number 1 defense in the NBA while OG Anunoby was on the court for, 11 games?
10, 11 games. Yeah.
10, 11 games he played, and he was a perfect fit. And also, he's a guy that could also, he's more known for his three-point shooting, but he could score off the bounce a little bit. And he's a big guy, and he's able to attack the rim. But obviously, more known for defense and his corner threes, arguably the best wing defender in the entire NBA. And he's a huge piece for any playoff team. He's a guy that can, for against any team, he can pretty much guard a team's best player. If he's playing the Sixers, he can go up against Tyrese Maxey. For Magic, he can go up against Paolo Banchero. He can guard Donovan Mitchell. He'll guard Jason Tatum. Yeah. He can guard anybody, and he does it at a high level. And then he's able to contribute on the offensive end as well. This is a player that's absolutely crucial, and they gave up 2 big-time players in R.J. Barrett and Emmanuel quickly to bring him in for a reason, and he is that, and hopefully he returns tonight, and the Knicks could get a much needed win, and especially if with a win tonight, they can pull within 3 games of Cleveland for that number 3 seed.
Yeah, and the Sixers only a game behind, so they could tie him tonight with a potential win.
I believe I'm not sure who gets the tiebreaker if it's 2-2. So that's a big deal. But and then Randall coming back, they just need Randall because they need somebody besides Brunson to create some offense, because at times the offense is ugly, especially when he's not on the court. So Randall is much needed. And a lot of Knicks fans always complain about Randall. We've seen how bad the offense is without him, so appreciate him while he's here. And the last thing I'll say, one person who should be the happiest of people is Josh Hart, because God knows I'm sure he doesn't want to play 45 minutes anymore.
It's ridiculous. Tibbs, you got to figure it out. Like, get some of your other guys on the game. But
poor Josh
anyway,
Hart.
Knicks got to get healthy. It looks like they're going to in the next few days here, so we're definitely happy about that. Fingers crossed for Robinson, for Randall to get back, and we'll see what happens with our beloved Knicks. But we're hoping that things get better here in the next couple of weeks. Couple more topics, Jack. We want to quickly talk about the Celtics. 2 really high-profile losses in the last week for them, bringing back the questions of, can we actually trust this team? They lost to Cleveland when they blew a 20-point lead in the fourth quarter in the what will be known as the Dean Wade game. Scored like 21 points in the fourth. That was crazy.
That was insane.
And then in the finals potential preview, they lost in Denver on Thursday night, in which Jokic made some of the greatest passes I've ever seen, including the lob pass to Aaron Gordon at the end. I don't know if I've ever seen someone do that before.
That was a skyhook
ridiculous.
Into a dunk. That was crazy.
And Tatum was awful in both of those games. He had 15 points, I believe, in the Denver game. Was not good against Cleveland either. And whatever kind of MVP case that he thought he was making, which I never bought into, but other people did, it's over now. Like, that's no chance that's happening. He is the best player on the best team, but he's just not at the level of Jokic or SGA or any of those other guys. So the questions are popping up. Again, can you trust them? Are they good enough late in the clutch to get through 4 playoff rounds? People are really wondering what the Celtics are going to look like. And yes, they're 50-14, so they've won a ton of games, and they have blown past people night after night with a lot of just 30-point wins and all that. But best point differential in the NBA as well. But it does beg the question of, can they actually get through? And I want to hear your kind of thoughts on it, of what you saw from them last week.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing you take away is Jason Tatum and his recent slump. And the slump continued, I believe, last night. They were playing at Portland.
Obviously, they won by like 20.
Yeah, they won by the game, but still, 9 of 23 from the field, 2 of 8 from 3-point range. So the struggles continue. And we've seen this before from Jason Tatum. As good as he is and as dominant as he can be, we know what he's capable of. But at the same time, we also know what he's capable of on the other end. The year they faced the Warriors in the finals, that was their series to win. And they lost that series.
We both picked them to win.
We both picked him to win.
Here on the show.
That series was on him for the reason they lost. He was not good. And last year in Miami's struggles, like a big part of the reason they fell behind 3-0 was because of him. So he's had his struggles in the past, so we don't necessarily know what we can expect. And it's weird. It seems almost as if him and Jaylen Brown never play dominant together necessarily.
And Jaylen scored 40 against Denver, and they still didn't win.
They still didn't win. He scored 44 points, and they didn't win. But also, like, for example, in those finals, Jaylen Brown played great, and Tatum struggled. In the series against Miami, in those 3 games they lost to go down 3-0. Jaylen Brown was playing well. Tatum was struggling. They came back. Tatum was playing well. Brown took a little bit more of a back role, and then obviously in that game 7,
they both sucked.
They were both terrible. So they don't necessarily show up all the time, and a part of me still does wonder, because I've never been crazy high on Joe Mazzulla as a coach, and I really wonder how he's approaching this slump with Tatum and how he's going to help him get out of it. Because I've always thought a little bit, I'm not saying Mazzulla is a terrible coach, but I think he's benefited a lot. He's had the most talented roster each of his 2 years as the Boston Celtics head coach.
Yep.
So he's benefited a lot from that. I thought Udoka was a much better coach, and I think if Udoka was the coach, they would have won the title possibly last season, because I thought their roster was a perfectly equipped.
And then they went out and traded for Porzingis and Holiday, and they're even better now.
Even better now, yeah.
Yeah, but so. it certainly makes people wonder, can they do it when it really matters?
Yeah,
and I think going up against Denver just exposes anybody in the clutch, because Denver is so damn good in those situations. Yeah. But Tatum missed the 3 in the corner at the end, and people are going to remember that. That's going to be part of his kind of season narrative as we move through here. And unless they win the title, that's going to be one of the defining moments of his year.
Yeah, and especially this year, if they don't win the title, I don't see how because I can't see them having a better team than they have than this year.
Well, they have to pay Holiday, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they're going to have to continue to be deep in the second
exactly.
apron and pay for this.
Horford's only getting older, and eventually Derek White is going to get a massive contract for the way he's played. So time only goes on for so long. So who's to say what the Celtics can do? But it also comes down to, we've always said this before, they're going to shoot close to 53s a game. If they make them, they have a great chance to win. If they don't, they got no chance.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. They shoot more threes than anybody. So they've blown a lot of teams out because of that, but they've also lost themselves some games because of that. All right, let's finish out with our debate. We got a couple minutes here just to finish out quickly, Jack. We talked about Boston. We talked about Denver, the two best teams in the league so far this season. That's at least what it looks like, the heavy favorites to be in the finals. And we want to just quickly debate who the biggest threats are in each conference for those teams. So for me, I'll start. With Denver, I think the biggest threat to them in the West is the Thunder. I know they're young. I know they don't have the playoff experience that you would typically expect, but they've got the number 2 guy in the MVP. They're number 1 in three-point percentage this year. They're top 10 in offense and defense. They're just an awesome team, deep, young, and have a super-duper star in SGA to lead them. I think that they're probably the biggest threat to Denver. The West is obviously awesome, but if I picked anybody right now to see them in the conference finals, I think it would be the Thunder. How about you?
I got to go with the Clippers, and I just look at that because look at their team. They got four Hall of Famers if Russell Westbrook can come back healthy in time, and I think he should be able to. But
broken hand there.
Yeah, broken hand. But again, he should be all right if he comes back before the start of the playoffs, and he's not a guy they're going to rely on to play 35 minutes a night, so he should be okay. But Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, they have Tyronn Lue, and we've seen in recent years he's one of the best coaches in the playoffs. So they have that experience. Kawhi Leonard is an absolute killer. If they can stay healthy, I think they have a great chance. And James Harden and Paul George, Russell Westbrook, they're all hungry for their first rings. I'm sure the three of them don't want to be remembered as three of the best players of this era that didn't win a championship.
Yeah.
So they're really striving to get that. And not to mention, I feel like the Clippers have a lot of things going right for them. Obviously, they've been, for the most part, they've been healthier this year. Kawhi Leonard has played a lot of games. He's played well. Paul George has looked good when he's been out there. James Harden has meshed really well with this team. They got a new arena opening next summer. What better way to open a new arena than by hanging a banner?
That's true. I just worry about the health with them, and
the health is always a concern.
Some of these guys have had their playoff struggles. With the Thunder, I don't know about those potential playoff struggles because we haven't seen them yet.
Of course, yeah.
Young teams typically don't win in the playoffs, yes, but there typically aren't rookies like Chet out there, and you don't typically have second-year guys like Jalen Williams. I mean, that team is just awesome. They've won all season long. They've been so consistent. SGA, so consistent, scoring 31 every single night seems like.
Part of it also for me,
I love that team.
Also for me is I think the Clippers can take a great approach is we'll let Jokic will dominate. He's going to do what he does, but I think there's no better team equipped to handle Jamal Murray than the Clippers.
That's true.
Throw Kawhi Leonard, Paul George at him, pick your poison.
Yeah. In the East, I think Milwaukee probably the biggest threat. They have the best player. They're getting healthy. We've talked about all this. They're well coached now with Doc. Dame is awesome. Wants to get his first championship. Scoring is easy. The defense is improving. I think it's an easy case for me. I think they're going to be the number 2 seed this year. That's what I expect to happen. And if they play in the conference finals against the Celtics, I think that's a team that could really give them trouble. Miami obviously is another option, but as we get deeper into the playoffs, I think Milwaukee's the biggest threat.
Fair enough. I'm gonna go with the New York Knicks if they're fully healthy. I look at them if they can have a starting 5 of Jalen, Dante, Anunoby, Randall, and Mitchell Robinson. I think that's one of the best starting 5s for anybody. We know what Jalen Brunson is capable of in the playoffs, and then you could add in, like I said before, OG Anunoby can pretty much stop any team's best player, and that's so crucial to have, and a lot of teams in the East don't have that necessarily. I think he's the best player equipped to stop a guy like Jason Tatum or a guy like Jaylen Brown to the Celtics, not to mention if Mitchell Robinson's healthy, what he brings defensively, and especially on the glass. The Knicks are a team that they love getting second chance buckets, and that's another crucial thing in the playoffs. And another big reason, last thing I'll say for that, is that a lot of teams really haven't seen them what they're capable of if they're fully healthy. So it's hard to how to game plan against that.
Okay. Those are your potential biggest contenders. You have the Knicks, and on the west side you have the Clippers. I have the Thunder and the Bucks. So we'll see what happens as we get there. But it looks like Denver and the Celtics looks like the heavy favorites in each conference to potentially meet in the finals. Jack, Our first ever episode here at 44 Media in the books. Any final thoughts before we head out?
Yeah, certainly a lot of fun, good atmosphere. So hopefully we can do it again soon. But this was a very good time.
Yeah. Our theme music was composed and produced by Jeffrey Taylor. One-on-One, executive produced by Gavin Berger and High Tops Media. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on TikTok. Follow us on Twitter at High Tops Media and on the show as well. Thanks again to Gregory and everyone here at 44 Media for helping us out today, giving us this amazing studio, giving us this opportunity to do the podcast. We're so grateful, so appreciative. Thanks so much to everybody who checked out the show. We had a blast doing it, and we'll be on again very soon to talk more NBA basketball.